Guys, I am super excited to be talking about this game today. We're going to be discussing one of my very first PS3 games ever. In fact, I have a bit of a short story to share with you all regarding this game because it actually was the first ever PS3 game I saw in real life, not just watching videos online or G4 TV at the time. This is Motorstorm, the famous off-road racer from the sadly now defunct Evolution Studios. Now, this game came bundled with my PS3 I got for Christmas in 2007, so it was part of a set of the very last PS3s that would end up supporting backwards compatibility with PS2 games. For those of you who haven't seen my console collection video from a few months ago, you know I have acquired one of those PS3s again, and I actually got to play this game on that system just like I did all those years back in 2007. So I coupled that with a brand new 6-axis controller at the time, and I was just transported back to a much earlier and simpler time in my life. I had a great amount of fun here. Now, as I mentioned before, I have a brief story to share. So once the PS3 was officially released, the $600 asking price was a bit of a hard pill to swallow. So at the time, they were also selling the lower tiered 20GB models, but despite both models having the same PS2 backwards compatibility, you know you wanted the 60GB version because the lower end model didn't even support built-in Wi-Fi. The Wii even supported built-in Wi-Fi, and if you were gaming back in the day, you know how frustrating it was to deal with the fact that the original Xbox 360 didn't support hardware Wi-Fi until the slim models, and so you had to buy these expensive adapters, and I think I even unboxed one and set one up on this very channel all those years ago. But because the asking price was so high, the PS3 wasn't exactly racing off the shelves. So Sony at the time was doing some interesting marketing tactics, and at the time, right outside of my local Best Buy, Sony brought in this huge semi-truck filled with PS3s connected to small 720p televisions, think like 24, 26 inches, and they had a few games set up to demo and play. It was there that I got to play the PS3 for the very first time thanks to one of these trucks. And the first game I got to play was, in fact, Motorstorm. I remember seeing this game on screen for the very first time and just being awestruck that visuals of this quality were even possible. You know, you could pick apart some of the graphical elements and see the limitations today, but back then this game looked so damn near close to being photorealistic, and just seeing the mud kick up in the races, the realistic environments, the destructions and physics of it all, it just worked effortlessly to pull you into the game, and I think in that moment I never wanted a PS3 more. So that was my initial experience with Motorstorm. I very much associated this game with the idea of next generation gaming at that time, and I was just very happy and excited to finally play it again after all these years later. Now I want to break down some of the elements of the gameplay here, but let's start with the racing. Now Motorstorm could be classified as this sort of intense off-road racer where you're basically competing in events in a sort of festival that's going on in the middle of nowhere. Now you compete in mostly races where your goal is to simply get the first place, but not every event requires a first place victory. So as long as you simply place and aren't too low or far behind the competition, you could progress forward in the game, which is nice. Actually, a decent lot of content here. Everything is sort of organized within the guise of this festival that's going on. So each event requires a ticket, which is then earned by competing in the event prior to it. And each event has a handful of races to compete in, and you just simply move up the ladder from there. Now, car handling wise, Motorstorm actually feels sort of realistic at times. Each car has a real sense of weight to it, and this isn't something where you're going to be hitting insanely high speeds and just sliding your way across the mud-filled tracks to victory. This game's handling actually requires a bit of skill to sort of maneuver your way through tight trenches. You have to dodge opponents and also various terrain and structural hazards as well. I mean, there's real damage to your vehicles. You may hit something and see individual parts just fly everywhere. And driving across muddy terrain causes dirt to kick up, which gets on the camera lens, making it extremely hard to see where you're going at some points. And also the physics truly play a key role here as well. You may hit something and see your car just kind of ricochet across the track, and the AI is also very aggressive. The gameplay here is very much in a league of its own, and it's not as arcadey as one would expect, but it's also, tense, and you have to train yourself to be patient with it, as consistency over speed is often what's going to get you to first place. You have some nice extras here as well, like a boost mode. You can engage nitrous effects with the hold of a button, and while you have unlimited boost, your meter fills and can overheat. So too much pressure can cause your car to actually explode, and you have to be careful when you use it because, you have to make sure you're also watching the meter at the same time. And as always, let's take a look at the Motorstorm box art for PlayStation 3. Now, I'm very happy to have this particular version of the game. This is the not for resale print, which was actually bundled with the PlayStation 3 80 gigabytes back in the day. So it's interesting because a lot of those copies, I guess, are now in circulation. So if you find a copy of Motorstorm, you are kind of likely to run into a version like this. But this is the same type of copy I had when I got my PS3 for Christmas in 2007. And it's in multiple different languages, as you can see there. So pretty awesome. I was happy to have this particular version. It means a lot to me. Now, if we open this up, we also have a nice clean game disc here with some different artwork on there. It also says not for resale on the game disc. So all that is pretty cool. And like I said, it's a very clean copy as well. So I was really happy to play this on my original PS3. And the manual here is in full color. We have a lot of pages, actually, somewhere around the 20-page range, which is really, really nice. And there's a look at the classic PS3 with sort of the startup guides, look at the controls here. This manual is just so well done. It's exactly the type of manuals that I used to love that we got with games. And there's so much art and just information packed in here. It's just beautiful. So we got to look at the game lobby here, different look at the controls and stuff like that. There's a look at all the different vehicle classes. And yeah, look at that, man. A full page dedicated to just the artwork of the game. I just love to see that. So yeah, pretty much everything you want to know is packed away in there. And it's all the credits and the talented people who worked on this. And as we get to the back, we got an ad for Lair, which I will be taking a look at sometime in the future. And there's a classic look at the PlayStation Store and all the messaging and online stuff. So just very, very fun. Another good look at the artwork there on the manual. Now, the PS3s were the first really systems to allow back cover art for physical copies here, and there's a cool look at what the artwork is like. So you just get some nice off-roading shot with some scenery. And yeah, it looks really, really cool. I always love the translucent cases that the PS3 offered. So cool look at the box art for Motorstorm. Really like the cover art for this one. Now visually, my god, this game still holds up. Now you can definitely see the limitations when viewing it through the lens of today, and texture detail on the terrain, while appreciable and good looking, is still a bit low. You also tend to see some rather blocky terrain detail and distant objects. Now the game's doing definitely the best it can to ensure that these elements don't stick out, and there's this nice sort of camera blur effect in motion, and depth of field is also used here for far distant objects in the environment. Overall, I think this is the first real game that when you compare it to other releases at its time, it finally showcases what Sony was trying to communicate with the PS3. It looks a lot better than Resistance and much more realistic, and while Ridge Racer 7 still has that edge in image clarity, the detail of this game trumps it. This is a gorgeous and forward-looking presentation that I think anyone would be hard-pressed to complain about, and it was the start of Sony finally landing on the graphical expectations that they were setting with the marketing for the PS3. Now, when it comes to sound, you also have a great variety here. You have different vehicles, everything from pickups to buggies to ATVs, SUVs, rally cars. I mean, I could go on here, and each vehicle sounds different and has a unique sound profile attached to it. So they all sound pretty beefy, and you combine that with the intensity from the physics and the handling, and it just really comes together. Now, depending on your vehicle, you also may be more or less vulnerable. The ATVs, for instance, are very quick and very responsive, but don't exactly give you much protection. And you could knock off other riders while being on these certain cars, but also just as easily get knocked off. And it's such a joy here because the noises of crashes and seeing your character sort of flailing in the air, wiping out, and the game kind of slows down and it's all slow motion and stuff. It just looks very cinematic. The soundtrack is just equally as fun and just adds to this whole atmosphere. You have a collection of hard rock and even some light metal in the game. It just really, adds to the fact of this game's flair and the whole festival and everything that's going on of motorsports. I had to sort of pace myself here because this game really made me happy to play it all these years later. It's a game I absolutely loved from way back in the day, and I still very much enjoy playing. It's just a great time all these years later. Now, while the later entries in the franchise would take you to exotic locations and just really build on this game's foundations visually, I still find that this initial game is very impressive, and playing it again after all this time just really made me miss Evolution Studios and their games. Not only this title, but their last game, Drive Club for PS4, was just one of my favorite racing games for the system, and I just hope that the talented people at this studio just found a place where they could really thrive and grow. In any case, let me know if you guys played Motorstorm back in the day or if you checked it out recently. What was your very first PS3 game that you saw with your eyes, and when did you get the system itself? I hope you guys have a good one, and thank you so much for watching this video. I look forward to speaking with you all very soon.